In a world obsessed with rankings, two men dare to chisel greatness out of metaphorical granite, one wildly subjective opinion at a time. This show, every episode, we select four icons from a single topic and immortalize them in our own personal halls of fame. Subjective? Absolutely. Debatable? Always. Set in stone? Until next week, welcome to the Mount Rushmore show, where your top four says everything about you. I'm Mike Mintz. He's Joe Mintz. Joe, a week off, but now we're back at it, man. So
I think it was 2 weeks off.
I think you're right, actually. I think we had, because we had Jimmy on, and then I think we had the two breaks. So,
Yeah, we got to bring the heat now, make up for lost time.
well, I think we got a great episode, and I don't want to spoil anything, but this is something that we haven't really talked about. It's kind of outside of our normal topics, I would say.
Yeah, we were talking before we started recording. We try to make these topical, where we're talking about something in the zeitgeist. And we got stuff going on. We got NBA playoffs. There's some great TV as always, but nothing was calling to us that we haven't already done. And I thought about something that we kind of took for granted, which is a great topic because it's happening all the time. And I'm talking specifically about scandals. And this is something in sports that are everywhere again. You've got stories tied to guys like Tiger Woods popping back into the conversation around infamously the DUI. Then there's rumors and headlines involving figures like Mike Vrabel and Diana Rossini. And then you sit down and watch something like Netflix's Untold series, which each week is covering a different scandal between Lamar Odom or the Jailblazers. And then even recently, I watched the Hulk Hogan documentary, which is fantastic, by the way. Had me thinking, trying to think of wrestling related Mount Rushmores we could do again, and which covered the rise and fall of one of our most historic, we'll call them athletes, pop culture figures with the steroid scandal and other things, including a infamous tape that went around. Um, and it's just one scandal after another. It's all the time. And it makes you step back and realize this isn't a right now thing. This is as old as sports themselves. From the Black Sox scandal over 100 years ago to doping scandals, gambling scandals, everything in between. Sports history isn't just defined by the greatness, it's defined by controversy right alongside it. And honestly, as fans, we're kind of part of the reason these stories hit so hard because we don't just watch athletes, we kind of build them up into these heroes, icons, larger than life figures without flaws. We attach meaning to them, we project value on them. We want them to represent all the things that we might not perfectly represent in ourselves around excellence, discipline, perfection. And then, almost inevitably, we find out they are human beings and something cracks. And when it does, there's this weird psychological flip in our heads. You go from idolizing these people to then obsessing over the downfall and almost rooting for it in a dark way. There's almost a built in tension in sports fandom where we love the rise, but if they get too high or they rise too fast, we equally draw to the fall. Part of it's human nature. There's something about seeing someone at the absolute peak and then watching it unravel that's impossible to look away from. Part of it's skepticism, I think. Deep down, I think fans know the stakes are just too high, the money's too big, and the pressure's just too intense. And then that's constant question is in the background, is this real or is this something going on behind the scenes? And then there's just the athlete side of it because the traits that make someone great, obsession, competitiveness, willingness to push limits, those don't just turn off when the game ends. The gladiators in the ring don't go home to their wives and just watch Netflix at night. That's just, they're not cuddly. They have a dark side to them. That DNA that makes someone elite also blurs ethical lines, justifies shortcuts, and creates a mindset of whatever it takes to win. So when scandals happen, they're shocking, but they shouldn't be that surprising. They feel like the dark side required of greatness. Now, for this Rushmore, I gave Mike the decision to take it however you want. I'll just speak for myself with my criteria. Then, Mike, you can go into yours. I'm not ranking personal scandals because once I go down that road, it can get heavy fast and it turns into comparing behavior that doesn't really I want carved on a Mount Rushmore. As much OJ is very controversial, folks, but his head will not be in my Rushmore in any topics. Um, but I'm going to talk about the integrity of the game sort of scandals that most of us know and remember. But Mike, what was your criteria for this? And any other thoughts before we get into it?
Well, I think your criteria is pretty much my criteria too, to some degree, because like we're not here. This is, I always think of '96 and Bill Clinton, right? Like, did what he did it have anything to do with the presidency? And the answer is no. And so, like, that's kind of how I view this. This is about the sport or the game or the player, not off the field, but on the field, or at least affecting the field. That's kind of my criteria. These ones are some big time ones. Some of them are really personal to me. And also some of them, I'll be honest with you, man, the deeper you, almost anything, even high school athletics, and Joe, I don't know if you're aware of this, but even in Montana, like if you dig deep enough, there's scholarships to private schools for certain players, right? And there's certainly questions about how old some of these kids might actually be or how many years of eligibility they've had. And those are like minor ones or conspiracies you could kind of scratch at. The ones I'm talking about are some of the really big, heavy hitter ones that involved either lots of people or were egregious in the way that they happened, or somebody was well known and then fall from grace. I like your idea of talking about Hulk. Hulk Hogan, yeah, what he did ultimately isn't awful in the grand scheme of things, but you have to remember this was a guy that built his career on saying your prayers and taking your vitamins and doing the right thing. When the guy that's presenting himself as this all-American personified greatness or right, then you're going to have to held to a higher standard. And when those people fall, the twilight, that situation can be really, I don't, there's something else. The dark side of the scandal is certainly the dark side of the sports, Joe, but you touched on it a little bit. The way we feel about it, right? There's almost this, you want to see it completely come crashing. And so there's a lot of fun here, but there's a lot of darkness too.
We wouldn't like reality TV if it was just people going to work and coming home, making dinner, and watching a show. Our lives aren't as exciting and often as complicated as some of the people we immortalize or use to disconnect from our own lives. We watch these things, true crime docs, drama on reality TV, comedies to escape often the boredom of our own world. The average person isn't like these people. These aren't average people, otherwise we wouldn't be watching it. And we shouldn't be surprised, and often aren't surprised. In fact, rooting for these things to keep ourselves entertained.
Well, this one should absolutely be entertaining. I got some great picks here. Joe, I'm sure you do. How do you want to kick this thing off, man?
I'm sure we'll share some, especially if you're not going into the personal stuff. Why not you kick it off, Mike? We'll see how many we match, if at all. Who knows?
I wonder about this one, and you mentioned it in your intro, but this is one I absolutely have to have, and this is the 1919 Black Sox. Yeah, it's 100 years ago, but it's the original sin of sports. This is this moment in time, and if you don't know the story, right, we're talking about the Chicago White Sox, who had just won the World Series 2 years previously, are in it again, and turns out that they decided that it was worth more money to throw the game rather than win the World Series. Eight of the players are going to be suspected and convicted, essentially, of participating in essentially purposely throwing the World Series. And it is going to be this moment in time. Actually, it's going to change baseball. We're going to go to a commissioner after this. And it involves some of the most famous players, including one of the most famous players of all time in shoeless Joe Jackson. This is such a well-known story that there's been movies about it as well as documentaries. Eight Men Out is a fantastic John Cusack, Charlie Sheen film. But it's one of those ones that kind of sticks with me because of the amount of people we're talking about. Eight different players in the World Series. agreeing to cash in order to throw the game. And there's some really interesting tidbits to show that the game was on. So Eddie Sacote, the pitcher, pitched the first pitch was a strike, and then to prove that they were going to do it with the gamblers in the crowd, he hits the batter. He throws a beans the batter, which was the signal, right? And that's what I love about this one is 1919, and you got all of this like this underground stuff occurring, and who's involved and who's not involved. And then there's, by the way, 9 games. They don't even they play what 7 now. Like they played forever back then. And then midway through the series, the gamblers don't pay after each game. And so then the players start to actually win the games and then they lose. And it's this whole back and forth thing, ends up in a trial. I'm talking too much, but here's the deal. It's one of the all-time first and probably most well-known scandals in professional sports.
Yeah, Mike, we're going to share this one. I think this was the obvious one because it really started it all when it comes to sports scandals and also impurity for us to experience at an early time. And this is before the true crime docs and reality TV that I earlier mentioned. Um, this is an era where sports were still seen as very blue collar, very pure, and something you play for love of the game. It's not what it is today, where athletes are making millions of dollars, and there's a lot on the line, um, both as fans watching and gambling culture, along with the athletes, the incentives involved. And this scandal really shattered that illusion of those things. It introduced the idea that we know all too well now that money influences outcomes. Players can be bought, and the game isn't always what it seems. It permanently changed how leagues operate. This is why we have commissioners. This is why we have rules around gambling. This is why integrity is just in general such a big deal. Without this scandal, the structure of professional sports today might look completely different.
I think it's one of those, I agree. And I think it's one of those that it's tough to kind of put your 1919, the Chicago White Sox are the biggest name in professional baseball, and professional baseball is the biggest sport in American culture. And for these guys to say, I'd rather lose, I'd rather not win the World Series for money, I think is this turning point where we have to go, oh yeah, there's something else here. I want to talk about Shoeless Joe Jackson real quick. Whether or not he threw or was part of it has been hotly debated, but how did he perform? And I'll give you the stats here. So he went, let's see if I got it. He had in the series, he had a 300 or 375 batting average, record 12 hits, committed no errors, and hit the only home run of the series. If he was throwing those games, he was doing a bad job at it. That's all I'll say. So
Yeah, that Shoeless Joe Jackson is the one that it's still debated today. You know, you
I
had
don't,
that scene in Field of Dreams too, Raylo to play Shoeless Joe, and you have defenses. And I looked into it a little bit. On paper, I mean, he was implicated like the rest of them, right? He was accused of taking money. His name was included, and the commissioner at the time made a zero tolerance decision. Any connection, you're out, right? So historically, he gets lumped in, as we know it. But this is where it gets interesting because statistically, he didn't play like someone throwing games. 375 batting average in the series, had multiple hits. He didn't make obvious game-changing errors. And over time, people pointed out if you're trying to lose, you probably don't perform like one of the best players on the field. There's also debate around whether he actually understood what was happening. He was pressured into taking money, or if he accepted money after the fact without actively participating. And then there's even bigger layer here is this was an era where players were underpaid, owners had all the power, and gambling influence was really everywhere. So some people view Jackson less as a villain and more as a guy caught in a system that was already broken.
I think ultimately is I just don't want to believe that he did it. I don't
Yeah,
know. I
that's
have
fair.
this, I want to believe he didn't. All right. Well, we're sharing it, Joe. You want me to go with number two or do you want to go with one here?
Go
So,
ahead.
all right. This one is one, I don't know if we'll share this one because it's kind of specific to me in a very specific time period. This is back in 2001 in the Little League World Series, and a pitcher named Danny Almonte. We'll call him the Toys R Us kid because he never wanted to grow up. Danny Almonte, by the way, was throwing something like 85 miles per hour fastballs in Little League that would be, because of the distance to the mound, would be equivalent to a 102 mile per hour fastball in the major leagues, and he was doing this against 12-year-olds. He pitched a no-hitter in one of the League World Series games. He also pitched the only perfect game that had been pitched up until that time. His team is going to lose because he's not allowed to pitch in the next game. And you're like, wow, that's awesome. How is this a scandal? Well, it turns out that he wasn't 12 years old. He was 14 years old, 2 years too old to be playing. His parents lied to get him in there. He wasn't even from New York. He was born in the Dominican Republic and had went to school that year in the Dominican Republic. They forged documents to appear that he went to school in New York so that he could play in the whole thing. It was a sham. It was a sham, and it's tough because I remember this. I remember going in my I was in basic training and I went to see my parents. They had come down for my graduation, and they were obsessed with watching the game. They turned the game on. It's a Little League World Series. Who's watching that? But this kid down in Almonte was they called him the next Randy Johnson. It was this big deal. And then when it came out, what had happened? People were truly hurt by the whole thing, and hurt by the fact that the parents did it. Not most of the blame didn't fall on the kid, which is probably rightfully so. Who knows how much involvement he had in it? But this is a problem of adults taking advantage of kids in sports.
Yeah, that's a great pick. We're not going to share this one, um, but it's the simplest form of cheating there is. Danny Alamonte wasn't just better, but being not even the same age. And what makes it hit harder is just that these are kids in the Little League World Series getting robbed of their moment. You know, it's not millionaires that, they lose a little bit of their reputation, but they're doing just fine. They know how to process their emotions, how to handle these things. It's different when it's kids. It also proves the bigger point. Even at the lowest level, you already see that win at all cost mindset. Same DNA, just earlier. But to your point, it probably was more pressure of the parents to see their kid with that level of success than it is the kid forcing it on the parents. I don't know. I'm speculating, but I like to think that at least.
Well, and he's going to get mostly, I mean, if you dig into the history of it, he's going to basically be cleared himself of any real wrongdoing. I mean, at 14, even at 14, you're not, if your parents are doing it, you're not really to blame for some of that. There's a power imbalance there. And he's going to go on to have a decent, middling, kind of farm league career. He's currently serving as an assistant coach. So it's not like it completely ruined his life. But it certainly is this capsule of time where the Little League series becomes part of a scandal, and that's really unfortunate.
Yeah. Good pick. I didn't think of that one.
All right,
Slipped under the
Joe,
cracks.
what do you got for your second?
Mine's a big name. You may have this one, and that's Lance Armstrong's doping scandal.
Oh yeah.
This one is fascinating because it's not as black and white as people make it. At his peak, many of you know Lance Armstrong, he wasn't just winning here, he was dominating. 7 Tour de France titles, global icon, cancer survivor, everyone wearing the yellow wristbands for the Live Strong movement. But then the truth comes out, systematic doping, right? And here's where I thought it got interesting. A lot of people believe, and there's certainly evidence to support this, that everyone at that level was doping. So, in a weird way, what Armstrong did may have been leveling the playing field. But the reason he's on the Rushmore isn't just the cheating, it's the cover up and the fall. He went from hero to having everything stripped, titles gone, reputation destroyed, sponsorships wiped out. This wasn't just a scandal, it was total identity collapse. And it forced fans to really ask if everyone's doing it, what does winning even mean?
This obviously we're sharing this one, Joe. This is one that is tough for me on kind of like Shoeless Joe Jackson. I don't want to believe it, but the evidence is overwhelming and he confessed and all of that stuff and what we know now. But at the time, Lance Armstrong was kind of a hero. And I think not just to me, but to everybody. The Live Strong movement, everybody had those wristbands on. And the stuff with him overcoming cancer, his 7 Tour de France wins. He was an iconic person who constantly battled these accusations in the media before, like since 2005, I want to say. Even the 99 Tour de France was called into question, and he was this constant force of saying it's a witch hunt and that it's not true. And then we find out over time how highly sophisticated the doping was, the blood transfusions and those types of things. And you're right. Like Floyd Landis comes out and talks about it. And of course, everybody's going, well, everybody's just like baseball in the 90s, right? Everybody is roided up. You basically have a juiced league, and you start to go, what was the point of doing this anyway? And he becomes the face of this downfall of this idea of was he the true American hero that he was presenting himself as, the comeback kid, the 7 times, and then you start to go, it's all a sham, it's all a ruse, and that's harsh, man.
And this one upsets me a little bit because it felt like we were picking on Lance Armstrong. I'm going to play a little bit of the victim here for Lance, um, because he was doing so much good for so many people. I mean, he did have cancer. He did come back from cancer. He did win those Tour de France's. It was an incredible story. He raised an incredible amount of money in a charity of Livestrong. He's a role model to kids and adults alike. And the evidence wasn't overwhelming until people chose to make it overwhelming. They dug, and they dug in a sport where everyone had their own baggage. They chose him, the guy doing the most good, not only for the sport, but for people. And they chose to put it all on him and make the face, what could have been the face of role models in a sport where everyone's quote unquote doing it. They chose to take this guy down. It felt so unfair. And I understand his motivation to take other people down before it came to what happened because he knows what's on the line. It's bigger than Lance Armstrong. What's to lose by this coming out? And he knew that. He knew all the money he raised and all the good he was doing would go away. So he had to defend it at all costs, not just selfishly for him, but selflessly in a way for the causes he was helping build. And I hate that he became the face of it. I just felt unfair. And I understand his motivations to hold on to it. And I'm not saying what he did was right, but I'm saying I don't think targeting him was right either.
I agree. And his downfall is particularly hurtful, not just for the Livestrong Foundation and everything he did there, but personally too. Notoriously, he's going to lose $75 million in one day. Gets dropped by all of his sponsors. What was it after the Oprah Winfrey confession?
Yeah.
And it goes downhill. And you sit there and you go, this was a guy, he was hilarious. I mean, he hosted the ESPYs, he was in movies like the You, Me, and Dupree, and he just seemed like the perfect guy for the perfect time. I'm gonna leave it on a quote here. It's not, this is a paraphrase, but they were doing I think it was a 60 Minutes, and the guy was explaining how everything worked and how the blood doping worked. And he goes, Lance Armstrong at this point in time is, basically superhuman. He's got better lung capacity, he's better speed, all of this stuff. And the question isn't, was Lance Armstrong doing it? He goes, the question is why aren't we all doing this? So it's an interesting point. So
Let me bring up a theoretical here too, Mike. Let's say Live Strong, hypothetically, he was embezzling money. It was
okay.
not going to the cause he said, right? But it came out without a shadow of a doubt he never took steroids and accomplished what he did, had cancer and everything. As fans, which do we deem as worse?
It's definitely the embezzling the money. Like I can understand the competition of sports. What I can't take is stealing. I don't know.
Me personally, I agree with you, but I wonder
Mm.
if how we remember Lance Armstrong is it more positive if it's the reverse? I don't know. I doubt it. Maybe I'm just stretching. I think when you talk about the integrity of the game, it hurts their legacy more almost than doing something um, more personally preposterous.
And I think you're right when you talked about the fact that there almost appeared to be this undaunting, we have to get Lance kind of thing. Where I think he became so big and it's so important and everything was so good that there's some people out there that just want to wreck it. I'm not saying that he's right in what he did or anything like that, but it's a tough one for me because I wore the Live Strong bracelets and
Yeah, I
I
miss him. We
and
should
I
bring him
missed
back,
I
Mike.
missed that time period and I missed Lance being the person, this overcoming adversity guy. And that's a tough one to take. That's a
It
hard
feels
pill
like
to
a
swallow.
misery loves company situation of the unhappy losers that are still doing what he's doing and couldn't win, were jealous of what he's accomplished and wish they had it, even though they didn't and
Yeah,
couldn't.
we definitely share this one, Joe. So
Okay, so that's three for you, Mike.
three for me.
So then
So
I'll go to my number three then,
okay,
and that is Tim Donaghy,
okay.
fixing games.
The ref, right?
The referee, right? They had a documentary on him on Netflix through the Untold series. This one might be the most unsettling because it didn't involve players. It involved the guy controlling the game. Tim Donaghy was an NBA referee, and he bet on games he officiated. Let that sink in. Not just betting, influencing outcomes. And the ripple effect of this scandal was massive. It made fans start questioning things like, are star players getting favorable calls? Do big market teams get better treatment? Is the NBA quietly steering outcomes for ratings? Even years later, people still bring up certain playoff series and say, was that legit? We saw this happen recently with Chauncey Billups and a ring of other people involved, which that could snowball into more through time. Um, and that's what makes this one an all timer for me. It didn't just expose one bad actor, it creating lasting paranoia about the entire league. And one thing I want to bring up is in the documentary, it is very Tim Donaghy focused. It's basically him at his defense in the documentary. He's a big feature of it, explaining how this got to where it is and why he's not alone without naming names in this culture happening. He's kind of the whistleblower in many ways. And he talks about early into refereeing before, he did take any sort of funds, which at a point in his defense, and again, his defense, not my defense of him, he felt he was forced into the gambling culture. He had no choice, and he felt his life was on the line for if not doing it. But there's a game in the 90s. He's refereeing Phil Jackson's Bulls with Michael Jordan, and he calls travel on Michael Jordan. And Phil Jackson erupts at him. And Tim Donaghy looks at him and says, the guy traveled. And he goes, I'm not questioning that he traveled or the call itself. I'm questioning on who you called it on. You don't call travel on Michael Jordan.
Well, Jordan, yeah.
Right. Because you want to see stars. And he realized there's a unwritten rule. It's not necessarily fixing the game, but you're subconsciously told we need to let the stars that are selling jerseys in the face of the league put up 30.
That's a whole can of worms, right? That Tim Donaghy is basically going to be opening up. And there's almost the games within the games. And they talk about that in baseball and the idea of, if you being one of our star players, we're going to, hit one of yours on the next end or make up calls for refs. Have you seen this, Joe? I'm sure you have. This was a big thing. Like if
Absolutely.
somebody gets a bad call and the refs then call a bad call on the other side, it's like
Yeah.
this is ridiculous, but it happens and it's always happened. It's almost become part of the understanding, the fabric of the games themselves. Tim Donaghy, of course, is going to try to defend himself in all of these ways, but the ultimate reality is the dude was bent. There's no doubt that he was absolutely forcing effects on games, and he's not a bad referee. Like that's the thing. It's like a bad waiter is going to sometimes charge you too much and sometimes charge you too little. A bent waiter is going to charge you too much every time out, right? And this was this way with Tim Donaghy. He was making calls to benefit the bets that he was making on the outside, and he's going to go down for it. He gets what, sentenced 15 months in jail for conspiring with gamblers. That's a pretty hefty deal. Most of these guys we're talking about are going to lose sponsorship deals or get kind of ravaged in the media. He's going to go down for real crimes, and rightfully so.
And Tim Donaghy is not saying he didn't do the things he's accused of. What he's saying is, I am a pawn in the culture that's already happening. You chose to make me the face of something that everyone knows inside the league and everyone is doing. And if you want to make me the tear down guy, fine. I mean, I did it along with anybody else. It feels like Lance Armstrong. Everyone's doing it, right? Doesn't make it right. It means to survive as an officiator, you have to play by their rules. And their rules aren't always as ethical as us fans may have at the time believed it to be, and now are skeptical of, understandably.
I think there's some truth to that, and I think there's a lot of truth to the Floyd Landis and the Lance Armstrong and the juicing in baseball, and everybody's doing it. I the here's the disconnect, right? There's somebody out there, probably quite a few of them, that are playing legit, that are playing the way that the game is designed to be played. The referees, there's probably many or plenty of them that are calling it as they see them kind of situation. The reality is if you wanted to have a juiced league, you should have it, but you should have a fair league. And all things being equal, I should be able to beat you or not, and that should be the game. That should be the game. It isn't, but it should be.
Well, Mike, side tangent here. Have you heard of the enhanced games?
I've heard the idea. Are they a reality now? I didn't know that.
Their
So
reality in Las Vegas, correct.
I'm all
Peter
for
Thiel, I
that.
think, is the face money man behind it. You probably have other donors like Dana White and such involved. Um, are you for or against this kind of league existing?
I'm all for it, and here's why. And I also watched the Hulk Hogan documentary, and I followed '80s action movie stars, and they were doping because steroids were legal when they started
Hmm.
out doing these things. The idea of them becoming, I even read the book, "You're Okay, It's Just a Bruise," the doctor of the Los Angeles Raiders in the '80s, and the beginning of the anabolic steroids with Lyle Alzado and stuff.
Mike, repeat that book. That is on my wish list right now. I've
Oh,
never heard of this. I am all over it.
it's called You're Okay, It's Just a Bruise. Dr. Rob Huizinga. Actually, the movie Any Given Sunday takes a lot from that book and puts it into their movie. Couple opening scenes. It's a fantastic book about the 1980s Raiders team and everything else, but also the beginning of the steroids push. And I wanted to get back to the point, which was if you're going to do it, that's a choice, right? Whether or not it's legal. And anabolic steroids are legal. You can get them prescribed. It's a medical thing. If this is something you wanted to do to yourself, that you chose. We live in a free country. I can eat as many double cheeseburgers as I want to. Nobody's telling me I can't, right? If that's the thing you want to do, fine. And you want to create a league that everybody is allowed to do it, great. And actually, I think that's better than trying to hide it in an actual league where everybody else is playing on equal footing. And if that's the only way you can compete, I saw this was a guy that said, the only way I was going to ever get to play is if I took steroids. What do you want me to do? Lose money? And it's like, okay, if that's the case, here's the league for you. I'm all for it, 100%.
Yeah, I think the argument against steroids always has been around youth sports
Mm-hmm.
is you these role models influence behavior at the lowest level in which people do it at a dangerous point. They don't have the facilitated trainers and such overseeing their use of this. And also, they don't have the athletic ability to reach the potential of these guys. And you've seen things like the documentary Bigger, Faster, Stronger, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
teens were dying from overdosing on steroids because they just didn't know what they were doing. But also, it part of it had to do with the hush hush nature of it. Is there was no transparency around the thing. It was almost like Fight Club. First rule is you don't talk about it. So therefore, you had kids going in with no information, just taking something because they believed it was the secret behind the thing, but they knew nothing about why or how because you didn't talk about it. What the enhanced games is doing is not only allowing players to do the thing that they probably already were doing in the non-enhanced games potentially, is it's creating transparency around the thing. It's buying a pack of cigarettes with the bold label saying this is dangerous and can kill you. And it's a choice at that point, right? It's telling you the McDonald's burger eating isn't good for you, but you can still have it if you want it. Hey kids, here's the risk associated, which otherwise was not being discussed. All you saw was winner over here taking a thing. Two and two together, if I take the thing, I become a winner. And what the Hands Games is saying is here's all the downsides of this thing. They're doing it anyway. Enjoy if you want to.
I couldn't agree more. And I think the reality is when you make it a legal thing or you make it an official deal, then you have testing and you have regulations and you have
Sure.
structure to it. When you're on a black market, the kids taking drugs these days, or anybody that's buying from a drug dealer, you have no idea what the rigorous testing, if there's any being done, or what's in those things. And the people making them probably don't have a college education, and who knows how much fentanyl they're putting into that thing. I mean, it's just like might as well regulate it, might as well do it right, and let people make informed decisions that are backed. I'm not saying I would do it. I'm not taking it, right? I would play the game for fair. And if I lose, that's just the way it happens, right? I'm not going to cheat to get ahead. But if somebody's sitting there going, but I could be bigger, I could be faster, I could be stronger, and I want it, I'm not going to tell them it's not fascism. I'm not taking the option away.
Right. Well, that segues really well into my last pick, if you don't mind if I throw this out there, which you may or may not have too.
Go
And I'm
for it.
just going to say as an era, the steroid era of baseball is my last pick. And this was an entire era, late 90s into 2000s. You've got guys like Barry Bonds, Mark McGwire, Sammy Sosa. These guys are crushing home runs at historic levels. And at the time, it saved baseball in a way. Fans loved it. The league really leaned into this whole thing, as they should have. But when the truth comes out, PEDs everywhere suddenly felt like the records were questionable, achievements felt really inflated, and the Hall of Fame became a debate instead of celebration. In fact, almost a joke. What makes the scandal unique is the hypocrisy behind it. Because deep down, most people believe other sports likely had similar issues, say football, basketball, hockey. Baseball just became the one that got exposed. So instead of a time where you could have celebrated one of the most exciting eras in sports history, now we debate whether it should even count. And it's really hurt the reputation of baseball when it didn't need to. It goes back to Lance Armstrong. Why did we choose him? Why did we choose baseball? Why can't we just celebrate things for what they are? And if we're going to go after one person, we should go after everybody. It's not fair to cherry pick.
Yeah, we're going to share this one, not completely, tangentially enough that we're going to call it because I got Mark McGuire on here, and the reasoning is the same, right? And you're right. Like, why does baseball get called out? Well, baseball is America's pastime, or at least that's what they called it for so long. Joe, there's congressional hearings about steroids in baseball in the 90s. The race to 62, I think, is the moment, the catalyst for all of this. When Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa are all of a sudden on the verge of breaking Roger Maris's record for the most home runs, it becomes this moment in sports time, in time, a cultural phenomenon. And being alive at the time, you couldn't avoid it. It was on television every night. If they weren't playing, the news was talking about them. ESPN was always about it. Sports Illustrated had multiple headlines and stuff dedicated to it. It was just part of the zeitgeist of reality, and everybody watched. I watched Mark McGwire hit 62 on TV live as it happened because I think it was probably just everybody knew it was going to happen. They even marked the baseballs. It was this whole thing. And I think it created um, kind of an avalanche. There was the snowball that started rolling down the hill of the questions starting to come up. Well, how come there's two players going to break a record in the same year? What's going on here? And then as you dug deeper, as you pulled back the layers of this onion, it just gets worse and stinkier as you go, and you get to find out the pitchers are doing it, right? Roger Clemens is indicted and determined to be guilty of this. And then you start to go, well, who cares at this point if everybody or nearly every major player is possibly part of this thing? Do we say this guy doesn't get in the Hall of Fame because he's extra guilty? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird time, and it still puts a weird stain on baseball. I think we're on the other side of it, to be honest. I don't think we talk about it as much. I think we've let it go as we watch things now. It's just whenever records are breaking or broken or people do historic things, we want to find out, well, it can't just be because of work ethic and genetics, and there's got to be something else. And I'm really glad. Well, I shouldn't even say that because I think about Tom Brady, right? Is he's one of the undeniable GOATs, but we still have things like Deflategate that we use against him, which is I didn't put Deflategate on here because I think it's ridiculous in general. I mean, you've even had other quarterbacks say, "Yeah, I like the ball a little depleted." I mean, It's insane if we look back in history, but it just you're trying to make sense of these outliers because we, as mere mortals, I'll say, can't understand how someone can be so much better than everyone else. It must be cheating. So when we say it must be cheating, we'll find reasons to make it cheating because we're always blurring those ethical lines of the game. We find ways to get ahead. We think we can outsmart our opponents. You have to do something everyone else isn't to get ahead. So therefore, it might not necessarily be quote unquote cheating, but we'll call it that in an effort to make sense of it. And steroids is that for baseball. Deflategate, you can say, is that for Tom Brady. Um, and we'll find ways to pick the guys that feel like the underdog still. But if they get too high, we'll find the thing. It's just no one's safe at a certain level of greatness, is the truth.
Yeah, there is something about that. Can we, and Michael Jordan with the gambling in the late 90s, and just, can we find something to tear this guy down?
We have to. It's the only way to make sense of it for us as fans, it feels like. And it's not fair. It bothers me. That's the culture we're in.
I
But
love, yeah, go
I,
on,
I
Joe.
don't want this to be all pessimistic. But I do want to acknowledge the pattern here from all the gambling scandals of Black Sox, Lance Armstrong, DeMonte, Tim Donaghy, the steroid era. Different sports, different eras, but you have the same themes here, right? You have those pressures to win, money on the line, edges being pushed. So you have that question of will it ever stop? So I'm going to go on the optimism side here. Now we have better testing, we have more transparency, e.g., the enhanced games, right? We have stronger enforcement. And the other reality is there's always incentive to get an edge. There's always money involved, and there's always someone willing to push the line. So maybe the truth is it's somewhere in the middle. Scandals will happen, they always have, but each one forces sports to evolve, tighten up, get a little closer to fairness each time, right? The Ten Commandments, thou shalt not kill. Why does that happen? Someone went and killed. All right, someone went and stole. Let's make that the second one, right? Is we evolve with time. We're going to create regulation. We're going to make things better as we evolve. Even if we never fully get there, and maybe that's part of being a fan, you believe in the game, but just enough skepticism to know it's not perfect.
Dude, I dig it. And that's going to wrap us up. So what's the takeaway here? Is it maybe it's shoeless Joe Jackson in the cornfields or Lance on the mountains? These scandals prove that the higher the pedestal, the harder they fall. The real question is who did it better? Who got the better scandals? We actually shared quite a few, Joe.
We did. I
We
think
did on there. So was that
three,
three of
two.
them? Two of them at least. So, but there's some good ones out there, and there's ones that we didn't talk about. We could do a whole nother show with our next four if we wanted to. The real question is, though, is what do you think? What would you carve onto your mountain? Until the next episode, he's Joe Mintz. I'm Mike Mintz, and this is the Mount Rushmore Show.